everybody. This is Paul Herman, the Prince of Motivation and host of Zaka Presents My Journey. We're creating this vulnerable and positive platform where you can get inspired and motivated from different leaders from our community. Today, our guest is Ty Richardson, who is an entrepreneur and business strategist. Hey, Ty, welcome to the show.
Hey, Paul, glad to be here.
Pleasure's all ours. I'm already loving the vibe already because of the office. I can see the energy and I can see there's a lot of stories that's on those walls right there.
Yes.
So I'm glad that we're going to be breaking into some of those stories. But before we even dive into all the wonderful things you're doing and where you are currently right now, just give us a little background on yourself, where you grew up.
Yeah. So I was born and raised in Trinidad and Tobago, a little island off the coast of Venezuela, for those of you who don't know, but everybody should know. And my parents were both entrepreneurs. So as
Okay.
I grew up in the family business. My dad had a few large stores. My mom had a few small stores. And, we used to go back and forth between the stores. So living and growing up in an entrepreneurial world, when I became 18 or when I became 17 actually of age, and it was time to decide what I wanted to do, I did the only natural thing, which is I left entrepreneurship and I went into being corporate. I went into corporate. And
Okay.
so I got a job with American Airlines at the age of 17. And
Oh,
that
wow.
and that started my professional journey
In Trinidad.
in Trinidad.
Okay.
At 18, I relocated to the United States with my whole family, with American Airlines. And
I was
again,
going
I
to say,
started
hopefully
my
you use
journey.
them. Get
Mhm.
this
Yep.
mileage.
Immediately went to school to get an undergrad degree in advertising, graduated at the age of 23, got a supervisor role at that point, leadership role at the ticket counter. And then at 23, I got promoted to branch manager of the Washington, D.C. Credit union for American Airlines. And then I pursued a master's degree. When I graduated at 25, I was promoted to head of business development for the credit union, moved to Texas,
Mm,
where I started a PhD. And as I was doing my PhD at 28, the company moved me over to Ireland, where I oversaw our call center operations for Europe and Asia Pacific from Dublin. Did that until I was 33 and decided I would leave American and pursue finally entrepreneurship, because even though I didn't pursue it, it was in my bones and I had to do it at some point in my career. So I left American, went to Silicon Valley and tried my hand at building a social network. I had two business partners at the time. I finished the PhD, wrote a book, and started to build this social network. Did not get the hockey stick curve that's required for success. So pivoted away from that and started teaching people how not to build social networks. And then from there, I decided, you know what, I'm tired of working in this space. I wanted to go travel. So I became a digital nomad. Went back to Trinidad, where I did not know anyone or have any sort of base of network. So I had to build a network from ground up, and ended up building this marketing agency that did events around in the country. And then we started to do marketing events for other brands like Microsoft and Coca-Cola and the film festival. So
in
eventually
Trinidad.
in Trinidad, yeah, we
Okay.
touched a little bit of Jamaica and Barbados, but most of it was in Trinidad. So eventually I learned something really critical. Trinidad at the age of 35 was not the same as it was at 15, and I'm not built to live on an island anymore and do business. So I came right back to the US. When I came to the US, I opened a capital company, a financial brokerage, and we helped people sort of identify capital sources. From there, I wanted to teach people the value and the art of business managing a career, young professionals, especially. I became a certified coach with Gallup, and opened a performance-based coaching company, coaching practice, picked up work with JMMB, the largest investment bank in the Caribbean. And then from there, COVID happened. During
Mm.
COVID, I was still coaching, I was still consulting, I was still working with businesses, I was still working on loans and funding. And I was headhunted by the company that I work with now to come in and coach their clients. So I started in 2022 coaching 55 clients on their business strategy. And within a few months was promoted to vice president of coaching, consulting, and business solutions for that company. And then 2 years later, so now this year,
2024.
I was promoted
I'm
again
catching you.
to head up the community side of things. So we now have a community for entrepreneurs around the world, and I run that community.
let's just stop for a second and really think about what just happened. First off, I commend you for knowing exactly the age when these things happened. It wasn't like you were like, I did this next. No, at the age of 33, I did this. And at the age of 35, I did this. And then so I greatly appreciate you for really diving in and really expressing like the age range and where you were, right? And I like the fact that you said you went back home to Trinidad, but then you said, look, the island's not for you, right? You were like, let's get out of there. And I, I really, really admire the fact that you said that from the beginning. You were like, it was already in your blood to be an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
right? And to help in that entrepreneurship development environment, right? You didn't dive into it at first, right? You kind of like strayed away from it, but then you found a way to get to it, and you kind of liked it, kind of enjoyed it, right?
Yeah.
Your story is beautiful, and the fact that every time you went somewhere else, you brought what you learned from the other place there, and it just kind of leveled you up, and it shows within a couple of months, years or so. Promotion, 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 and you were like, "Look, it's time for me to go." Right? It just I had to ask this question: is the company in Trinidad is there?
It's a brand. So
It's
we
where?
built
Oh,
a brand, and the brand is still alive. It's not as robust as it was when I was there, and this is one of the things I had to discover about myself. So we talked a little bit about failures as well as the successes, like those certificates. For many years, I've built over maybe 5 to 6 communities. I've built organizations where people get together and they help each other, but I could never figure out how to build a brand that I could separate from, and it exists in its own way. And that was the thing. It's like when I left Trinidad, or when I left Ireland, or when I left San Francisco, the brand came with me, and it forced me to realize, I mean, I am the brand. And today, to this day, as I build this community that we're building now, this other organization, how do I build a self-sustaining brand that is not dependent on me as the face of that brand to keep going?
that is a very hard thing as an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
because you are you are the cream of the crop. Everybody wants you. Everybody
Yeah.
wants you, but then you're like you can't be in so many places at so many times, right?
Oh,
Now, talk to me a little bit more about Trinidad, right? And like growing up, like what is like some of your early childhood? I know you said you were only there until like 17, and that you use your frequent flying miles to get your family members here. Right? So shout out to that. If anybody doesn't know about frequent flying miles, get to it, right? But you got your frequent flying miles, you got everybody. But talk about your childhood growing up in Trinidad. Any life lessons that you learned during that time? Obviously, you might have learned some entrepreneurial, things from your family members and stuff. But like anything else, life lessons growing up in Trinidad.
Yeah, growing up in Trinidad, like any other island, I imagine, it's not the States, right? It's not as glamorous and as glorified, and it's not as much freedom. And there are real intrinsic belief systems, values, cultural requirements. There are ways you are expected to be and you have to live. And for me growing up in Trinidad, I broke the rules. I challenged the system, the status quo. I remember in high school, we took exams by subject, right? That's how you would
Mhm.
pass your
Yep,
certificate.
yep.
And for me, you were allowed. I went to QRC, Queens Royal College, which was a premier school, and you were allowed seven subjects. If you were in sort of the fast track, you got 8. I wasn't happy with that. I did 9. I did 9 because I could do 9. And I learned that whatever the status quo is, if you believe in yourself strong enough and you have that conviction, you can do it. My beginnings in high school were a little rough. I transferred schools from one Ivy League school to another Ivy League school, and when I got there, I was like an outsider. I had challenges with um, you know integrating and fitting in. But by year 3, I overcame that. I understood how to navigate the system. I understood who I could depend on, who were my friends, who I formed alliances and allegiances with, who I formed friendships with. I understood,
Mhm.
exactly how to navigate and get where I needed to be. And I had to be the hero of my own story. Nobody was going to come save me. Nobody was going to give me a leg up or a handout. I did everything myself. And regardless of where you come from, that self-belief, that understanding of who you are early enough to know how to control that, how to intentionally live your life and lead your path regardless of your environment. Like I think I discovered that from being in Trinidad, and not because people showed me that as an example, because I had to develop it myself.
Mm.
And that support system, that structure, it's there, It was there. My parents were very supportive as entrepreneurs. There was an expectation that you would participate and be in the business. You would support the family. You would take over at some point. And I did that. When I worked at American at 17, I still came back to the store and I still applied some of the things I learned and systems that we built and processes. I lifted up the business, but I knew that wouldn't be my path. And I knew that I was destined for something else. And I stayed very intentional and very focused. So growing up in Trinidad was a lesson in character, a lesson in fortitude, a lesson in intentionality, a lesson in charting your own course, a lesson in breaking the rules when you feel like you're confident enough to break the rules, and realizing that the world is your oyster. It doesn't matter that you're on an island of 1.6 million people, that you have access to the world and you can be as great, as people who live in a $300 million country, 300 million person country, sorry.
And you do, and nowadays in 2024, like the access is just endless. Endless. It's really at your fingertips.
Yeah.
It's not even in a school. It's not even just in a book. It's within your fingertips. So it's how we utilize that access, right? And get close to the access, to get closer to the opportunity, to move into that next direction, right? So, but you're right about that. I love how you're expressing, like, it doesn't matter where you're from, right? Being on an island, like, it's not even like you were in New York, right? I'm giving an example, right? People are like, oh, you go to New York, you're gonna make it, right? You're in an island. And look at the experiences that you've gained over the many years. Like, you've visited several different places, countries, states, and stuff like that. Out of curiosity now, where's the best place so far?
Ooh. So I'll give you context. I have been to when I joined American, they give you this welcome aboard. They gave you this welcome aboard pass. You have to choose a destination anywhere that the airline flies. And I chose to go from Trinidad to London. And after having been to 68 countries in the world, I still love London.
Okay. And I know you love Trinidad. So, because, tell me a little bit more about the culture of Trinidad. Like, why do you love the Trinidad culture? I know it's obviously you, but I know there's a line that always comes out: Trini to the bone. Trini to the bone. And I'm Caribbean descent as well too. My mother's Jamaican, my father's St. Lucian. So whenever I meet somebody from the Caribbean island, everyone's got like their own phrase. You're from the yard? Oh, Trini to the bone, right? So talk to me a little bit more about the culture.
I've been to many, many, many places. And the thing about Trinidadian culture is that Trinidadians are a happy people. There's just this sense of like, it'll be okay. Life will go on. Life is fine. Everybody's happy. I don't know whether that comes from Carnival or if it just comes from being in the sun all the time, but everybody is genuinely happy. And, there are challenges. There are things that are not ideal in the country economically and politically, et cetera. But for the most part, outside of those challenges, the people are genuinely nice, genuinely caring, genuinely happy people. When I went back after, over a decade of not being there, I wasn't hard to build a relationship with people I'd never met. It wasn't hard to build a company from scratch because people were genuinely, interested, and they wanted to see this world and they want to be a part of somebody who had been out and came back in before. They were very giving, very generous, very friendly, very supportive. My parents, I come from a biracial background, right? So my dad is Afro-Trinidadian, my mom is Indo-Trinidadian. And so we grew up fully realized in the Hindu culture and Diwali, and understanding, you have to be vegetarian for 3 weeks before Diwali, and, understanding that culture. But similarly, like going to the beach on the weekends and having family day with my dad's side of the family, and, really embracing the concept of, my family has 52 cousins, by the way, embracing the concept
almost enough as the countries and places you visited.
Embracing that sense of family and repeating cultural things. Like, I remember Christmas is very specific for me. Christmas is sorrel and parang and, black cake. It's very specific staples that without it doesn't seem like Christmas. It doesn't feel like the same Christmas. Similarly around Diwali, it's like, Palori, it's diyas, it's pujas. Like, when you smell the oil in the diya, that's what's happening. Like, that's the time of year you're in. And so it gives me memories that will inevitably throughout the course of my life bring back nostalgia and reminisce about a simpler life that was not filled with technology and, media and, cable TV, like just a simpler life that I can harken back to when I get those senses, those smells, those tastes, those feelings.
And I do the same thing myself sometimes when I walk into like a Jamaican bakery,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I'm just like, hold on now. This smell like grandma's house real
Smells
quick.
like home. It smells like
Yeah, yeah.
1990. Yeah.
You get a little flashback, and when I say those things, my friends are like, "You always got to go somewhere. You always got to."
Yeah.
But it's that connection that we have to it,
Yes.
and it's so good that we could still have that connection to our culture, even if it's from a distance, right? At times, we're not physically there on the country, and in a
Yeah.
sense, on the land. It's like kind of just being there on the, even like you said, on the beach. But it's that feeling that comes to it, and that just goes to show how connected we still are to it, right? Where it's like
Absolutely.
this feels like that, right?
Yeah.
Now, 17, 18, I know you said 17 was that time frame. You got the job. 18 is when you came to the US, like, and you said the whole family came out, right? So out of curiosity, what was like one of the biggest obstacles you faced, like in that transition at the age of 18, having the whole family come with you?
Yeah, I mean, we got here and we didn't, we came up and we had to figure everything out, right? I mean, we were upper middle class in Trinidad. My parents were entrepreneurs, money was not an issue. We had a comfortable life. But coming here, because the exchange rate at the time was 7 to 1, like you got to start over. You got to have a full bank account. And we didn't have credit. So like getting things like credit cards, and even for me, like getting a car, I got a car because thank God I had worked for American Airlines for a year. I came up and the credit union was like, we'll give you $5,000 for a car. Find the car, we'll lend it to you with zero credit because you're part of the company and you've been part of the company for a year. But if I didn't
Nice.
have that benefit, I can't imagine what a new immigrant would probably have to pay cash for that car. And so, understanding the credit system, that is a make or break here for your success. Like we had to find a house and a private landlord. We couldn't go to a building because we had no credit or we had no prior renting history for a building to give us an apartment. We had to start from ground zero, from scratch. So we found a house that the landlord was private, and he allowed us to pay. We could pay the rent, but obviously we didn't have a rental history. And what I will say is this: we got to the United States, and as a family we lived together. It was my older sister, my younger sister, my younger brother, my mom, and myself. And so we had a 5-bedroom house. We found we lived here. And as a first generation immigrant, having to figure out credit cards, having to figure out credit, having to buy a car, having to get a job because they had to get jobs, having to find a place to live, enroll in school with no paperwork, like a foreign countries paperwork, like the whole, like starting from zero, like
Yeah,
scratch.
that's nerve-wracking at times too.
2 years later, with pride, I say, we built a house for $200,000. 2 years later, my mom and I co-signed. We built our very first house after 2 years, which we then sold, 2 years later for 500,000, making a full
Woo!
profit. But this is why I say, there's no excuse. It doesn't matter where you come from or what you're doing or what disadvantage you have or what. If you have intentionality, if you have a will, if you have a belief system, if you know where you want to go. We came with nothing and we started from scratch. And 2 years after that, we were able to buy a 6-figure house, build a 6-figure house, and continue a life of comfortability here in the US. Anyone can do
You are dropping some stuff today. You know that?
it.
You are just oozing off right now. Just like, all right, look, let me just drop this. And you're really, really hinting at something in which listeners, if you're listening in right now, need you to tap in. Anything is possible. Anything is possible, right?
Everything is possible.
That's where, come on, let's get it. Everything is possible. Intention, purpose, discipline, dedication, community, family, all of these things are going to be very important in that melting pot to make that thing happen. But you can make it happen.
Yeah.
Like you said, coming here with nothing, not even knowing the credit system, not even, you had to find an individual, a landlord, to believe that you're going to pay the rent.
Yeah.
And then 2 years later, not even like 10 years, a decade goes by and you're like, all right, we're ready. No, 2 years later to build and to build the house in which you want to live in.
Mm-hmm.
That is totally different from just like, oh, we moved to a better house. No, 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 no. We built what we wanted. And some of that might have been like, let's mimic some of the stuff we had in Trinidad. Listen, we wanted that then. We wanted this. That's amazing to be able to pull that off. Wow, 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 wow. Hopefully you have a picture of that house somewhere on the wall over there.
I not in the office, but we do have a picture of the house. It
Okay.
was the first house we built here, and I've owned houses since. Houses on a golf course. We've gone up from there.
Let's come on, but that's why we on this call right now. This is why we on this call, because we want you to keep on expressing that to our members and let them know it is all possible.
It is
Talk
all
to me
possible.
about right now corporate, right? We're gonna talk about a little bit about Trinidad, Silicon Valley, right? You're in this world now, right? How did your upbringing and your cultural background shape your drive and your discipline to succeed in the corporate world? Because corporate world, we already know, could be a little crazy at
Yeah.
times, and maybe at all the times,
Yeah.
right? Heard a lot of horror stories on these calls right here, but want to hear your perspective.
So one of my first memories of corporate was working at American. I was 21 years old. I wanted to become a supervisor at the ticket counter. And in my mind, I was confident that I was doing everything that I needed to do, and I was going to become this leader. And I told my boss at the time, I was like, I want to apply for this. And she's like, you might want to think about that. And what she said is, go talk to the people who have the loudest voice, who are more, your fellow agents who have a perception that will be leading. You will be leading if you got this role. And so I think that for anyone else, it would be challenging. But one of the things that I learned growing up is humility, and the fact that you're not too big for your britches. Like, you have to make sure that you have a level of humility, you have a level of listening skills, like you are understanding and you're paying attention. And I remember going through and talking to some people who were much older than, like 40 years, like senior, like 60 years senior, 30 years in the job. And I got some of the harshest and most brutal comments, like, you're a skater, you look like you never do the job, you're always like anywhere
Oh,
except at the desk. And here I was 21 thinking that I was great, and then getting a slap into reality. And it was like 4 or 5 people that literally like gave me that feedback. And I will tell you this, Paul, I took the feedback and I pivoted. I adjusted my behavior. And within 6 months, they offered me the job. I didn't apply for it again. I was asked, we want you to step up into this role. Because I had made such a turnaround. I didn't get huffy and puffy and angry and like, you guys don't know what you're talking about. I took it on because I learned humility growing up. I learned that when a customer walks into my mom's store and they complain, I can't be upset with them. I have to take that complaint and serve that need. I can't be arrogant the way some people are arrogant, like, oh, you're wrong, I'm right. No, you have to make a sale. And I learned at American too, like, the customer is value. Without the customer, they're paying our salary. Without them, there's no business. So
yeah.
we need to be humble and we need to listen. And I use that in my feedback in my career. And I would, over time, I was able to go through different opportunities within American, where I was asked to take on responsibilities and roles and jobs because I had demonstrated a skill. And the skill was I can achieve results, and I can bring a team together, and I can listen to what they need, and I can use them to deliver results. It's funny. I started at American at 17, and the woman who hired me, she was in a temporary role because the actual general manager was on another assignment. And she hired me into that first role at the age of 17. She was the GM. 14 years later, she and I worked together in my last role at American, and she was from Trinidad. So she had moved through the system the way I did, and we became peers, from boss to employee to
Wow.
peers 14 years later in Dublin, Ireland, where we worked together in my last role. And so, and it felt good for me. And to me, that's a remarkable
Yeah.
story, because she was that memory of culture. She was that's where you came from. She, in my exit from American, like, having her at that time kind of
At the
reminding
start
me
and at the end.
at the end, but reminding me, as you continue your journey, don't forget where you came from, just by her
Facts.
presence, just because she was there. And she and I had a lot of developmental conversations. We had a lot. She was like a mentor. She was a mentor to me because I'd watched her work through the system. I'd watched her take her culture and her values from Trinidad to India to Ireland, and I saw what she was able to do and stay grounded in who she was as she traveled. And I did the same.
The fact that you use a very, very powerful word, which always is utilized here: mentors.
Mm-hmm.
Mentors. A lot of, I want to say 95% of the individuals that I have interviewed on this platform have all mentioned the word mentor. Whether it was a mentor when they were growing up back where they were coming from, where they originated from, or a mentor within their corporate life, or just mentors that they watched over the many years from a distance, an indirect mentor. They still had someone they looked up to, or
Mm-hmm.
someone that they could trust and go to. But the word mentor is a big word, and I something that we always express here at the Zaka platform. Like, closed mouths don't get fed, right? Sometimes you need to speak up, right? And the story that you just gave right there and expressed that, like, these people came to you, 4 or 5 individuals, and told you about yourself, and you're like, wait, hold up, I thought I was good, right? And the fact that we might have like that tendency to like react right away because we're hearing something about ourselves that might make us feel insecure or make us feel like we're not good enough, and then it creates that tension within the office. But you took that conversation and turned it around. You said within 6 months, right? 6 months. It's not even like, again, the turnaround ratio for you is impeccable.
You have to move.
We're gonna buy the house. We're gonna build a house. 6 months, you're gonna ask me for the job to come work for you, right? It just goes again to show like you have laser focus, laser focus when it comes to this kind of stuff. So again, kudos and thank you for sharing these stories, man. I'm loving it, loving it. But I know that the story of leaving corporate, right? You mentioned that a little earlier. Like, you're at your high, you're at a peak, and you say, "I'm good. I'm good." Now, as an immigrant, first generation, second generation immigrant, one of the things that our parents and our grandparents always instilled in us, they want us to be successful, right? And success comes in all different forms, right? To some people, it might be money or a house or a car, but just being happy, right? You reach a level of happiness. You're at the top. You're working hard, taking care of your responsibilities, and then you say, "I'm out." Talk to us.
So it was a little bit of a difference. So what happened, my journey out of corporate was almost the universe saying, you got to go. Because the way it happened is we decided to shut down that office. And I was given a choice of, well, I was given an opportunity to repatriate back to the United States at a job at my level. Now, they also had a package that were going out because the company had just declared bankruptcy. American had just declared bankruptcy. It was a chance to reorganize the books. And the opportunity at that point was take a package or repatriate back to the US. And at that time, I had another mentor who had said, well, I had a conversation with, and he said, Ty, if you're getting salary and if you're getting flight benefits for 2 years, and if you decide in those 2 year period that you want to come back to American, just give me a call and we'll see what see what's there. And I remember that I was like, okay, so I have a 2 year pass here to do whatever I want. And then I can go back in if I decided, that I don't want to be an entrepreneur anymore. And that's what made me leave American. I opted not to repatriate back. I opted to leave everything, go to Silicon Valley, raise some money, and start this social network. Now, at the time I was living in Dublin, I was an American in a foreign city, and I had to kind of figure out how do I meet people. And believe it or not, I'm more of an introvert than an extrovert. So I would go to networking events, and I wouldn't really connect with people. It wasn't my jam. So I did the only like this, I was still full time, working for American, running this division for the call center. And I remember saying to myself, you know what? Nothing exists the way I wanted to. So I'm going to build it. And so I built a networking organization in Dublin that eventually linked to one in London, Bangkok, and Spain. But this networking event, all I would do was create these networking experiences that were immersive and invite people to attend. And over the course of passively doing this, for fun, we had over 2 years, 800 people that became part of this community. And I thought to myself, okay, we did a really good job of curating these experiences. We made the front page of magazines, newspapers. We were invited to photo shoots. I went to like the ambassadors. I was like, it was a big deal. And I remember saying to myself, there's something here. I'm going to leave American, take this safety net that I have, going to go to Silicon Valley and try my hand and build, at the time, I didn't know I was going to build a social network. At the time, I thought we would just build a company around these events and go national. And I brought in a couple of partners, and together we envisioned what this would be. Now we got sold into the concept that it should be a social network by a company at the time who was recruiting, and we were naive and we're like, okay, maybe it is a social network. And I paid them, like $100,000, and we went through this course, and it didn't come out the way it was supposed to. It was my first lesson in failure, but I couldn't sit down in failure because now I had 2 business partners, and we couldn't just, what do? We pivoted really quickly and became product developers and coaches for other people. But the point being, I understood very, very, very clearly that this was my path. Like I can leave American with this safety net. I can go into entrepreneurship. And 2 years later, if I decided that this wasn't for me, I would go back. Now, 2 years later, the US Airways takeover happened. My mentor at the time, he got fired. The whole C-suite of American got fired. So, there was no place to go back. Yeah, there was no place to go back to. It was over. It was done. So I have to now stay in this entrepreneurship course. And, that's how we ended up where we are today.
That was a little hard one right there. Like, yeah, I can go back in 2 years. It's not even there anymore.
It's no.
The fact that you said everyone got fired.
Everybody got fired.
Well, I think you left at the right time then. I think you're good. I think you're good. I think you did
it. It's a different American to the American that I knew growing up. I mean, American was the Harvard of airlines. The things I learned still serve me today. We had to every day figure out how to do more with less. And you would think $1 billion company like that, there's always a cash reserve. Well, we didn't. We had to figure out how to run an operation with very little money and injection. But it taught me, believe it or not, how to be an entrepreneur.
My mother worked in the airline. She worked in Northwest Airlines back in the days, right? And I used to it would be rivalry trying to figure out which airline was the best airline. I don't want to go down that.
I remember Northwest and Delta merged. Yeah.
That I every time, and I remember going back to the Caribbean and flying on these airlines and be like, you got to go American. You got to go with American.
Yeah.
I'm like,
American owned the region at the time.
Yeah, everyone's like, you got to go to American. Every business person I saw walking in there with a briefcase going to American Airlines, right? And I'm like, okay, all right, American. So shout out to American. You figured it out at an early age. Go to a really good, reputable company and work your way up. So kudos to that. Right? Yeah. Now, as an immigrant entrepreneur now we're in the entrepreneur lifestyle, right? How'd you navigate, like gaining access to like capital, building a business? Obviously your experience, you're learning as you go, right? It wasn't like you went to school for this and they gave you all the pointers and they were like, hey, look, now you can go do it. How'd you navigate, and how did you use your cultural background to kind of like leverage that as you went up?
Navigating, it's back to that intentionality, right? There were 2 jobs I only ever wanted. When I was in Trinidad, I told my mom there's only ever 2 places I wanted to work, either the airline or the bank. They were prestigious jobs. And so happened my first job was with the airline. And then 6 years into the airline, I managed to work for the credit union, which is the bank. And so I checked both off the list in my career.
And both at the same company.
Both at the same company. Yep.
I'm saying, come on,
still in the ecosystem, right? Back to that intentionality. And I think to some degree that once you put it out there, this is what you want. It may not be today, tomorrow, next year, but it will come if you believe strongly enough and you have conviction. For me, accessing capital, back to I believe money's all around you. I believe that if you want it bad enough, it can happen. When I had to raise money for that, for my venture in Silicon Valley, I had a friend who was a stock trader who was my best friend at the time. We lived in Ireland together. He was American, but he was a stock trader and he had done really well. And I pitched him on the idea. He'd been to some of the events that I'd done and he was all in. And he was like, here's the money. And believe it or not, even though he gave me the capital to do the startup, he was a friend first and an investor second. And so when the startup didn't go as planned, I used my own money and I personally paid him back every single dollar that he had invested, because I didn't want to do him wrong. And you want to talk about cultural, like that's something that I think is a very different between somebody coming from my background in the Caribbean and somebody who potentially is from a more developed world. It's a business deal. You lost the
Yeah.
money, you lost the money, right? That's it. You knew what you were going
You win
into.
or you could lose. Bottom
Yeah,
line. You never
exactly.
know.
But there is that sense of family, right? That sense of camaraderie between the people that you grew up with, the people who care about you, people who invest in you, and that made me want to pay him back every single cent, which I did. And then, from there, every time I did a venture, it was organic. It was more of, people making the sale or getting a little bit of money, making the sale, and then using that to make more money and organically growing up, building businesses from there. What I will say is this, again, I go back to this concept of managing intentionality with sort of belief. Last year, I had an unusual circumstance happen. So last year, I got a call out of the blue, from a company in New York that said, "Hey, we like your LinkedIn profile. We want to
It's
give
always
you a
LinkedIn.
scholarship."
It's always the link. Listeners, listen up. Grab yourself a LinkedIn page.
Yeah, we wanna offer you a scholarship, and it was a scholarship to learn basically the world of mergers and acquisitions and private equity. And it was 4 months virtual, and I went through it. And then at the end of it, they said, "You know what? Of everybody here, we have 5 gifts, 5 grants that we can give out for $50,000 each." And I said, "Okay, great. Let's pitch the idea." I pitched the idea. Lo and behold, I got $50,000. Right. So this is a free program, mergers and acquisitions. They said, "We want you to go do your merger, do your first merger." And so I couldn't have planned that. And one of the things that was key to that involvement was they were looking for minority entrepreneurs. And so I couldn't have planned that. I don't know if I would have seen it. I might have applied and not gotten in, but the universe sent it to me because I believed that I'm in a space and I have the opportunity to do something great when it comes to business. And I pulled that in, I manifested it, I got scholarship and I got the money. And now we're in the process of picking up our first company, because the goal here is to pick up one company and roll in another and another and another, and have a big presence in the space that I want to be in.
Bro. You are tapping in. And something that's I'm noticing, you're not, you can tell me if I'm right or wrong. Doesn't seem like you're afraid to take that leap of faith. Okay, because I'm gathering this right now from all the things that
The
you
answer is
mentioned.
yes, and we'll figure it out after.
Okay, that's right. Because every time you're speaking about something and it's like the opportunity is there, you jump on it.
Yeah.
And you're not saying, "Well, I thought about it. I took some time. I left. I didn't feel comfortable doing it." No, you're like, they gave me the job. I took it. They told me to go to Ireland. I went.
Yeah, Paul, the reality is for every job I got, I had never done the job before. I had never done sales and I was head of business development. I never did banking and I was branch manager. I never did call centers and I was the head of the call center operations. I had never been a coach
Excellent
before I
thing to
became
point
a
out.
before I became a coach. I never did coaching. I didn't build a marketing agency. I didn't do any marketing before that. So for me, it's not, the job can always be done because there's strengths and there's skill. And you can learn a skill. I can learn marketing, I can learn coaching, but my strength is being driven. It's being focused. It's being able to organize things. Like my actual strengths are the things that I need to use to develop the skill to do the job. You have to hire for attitude and train for skill. Similarly, when you get an opportunity, you have to identify, is that an opportunity that is compatible with what your natural strengths are? And then you can learn the skill. I can learn private equity, but I know that I can run a business.
I like hire for attitude you train for skill. That could definitely is a formula right there.
Mhm.
You want to find the person with the right attitude because, like you said, a lot of these skill sets and skills are always adapted and changing, right? Before it was sending facts, that was the skill. If you
Yeah,
could send a fax, you got the job, right?
yeah,
Then it was email. Now it's like DMs and all these other extra stuff that goes on, social media platforms.
yeah.
So you're right. The attitude is very important. Having someone who's driven, hardworking, and I could see why these individuals are looking at someone like yourself and saying, "Why not?"
Mhm.
He might not know the skill set to be very proficient in this division, but we know through time and training to develop those skill sets and sharpen them up, it'll be just as fine. And as you can see, you proved them right. You made it happen every time, every time. Now, owning and working and doing a lot of multitasking, right? A lot of multitasking. You have run multiple businesses, leading high performance teams across the industries, coming up with a whole bunch of new ways, new things, new tools. There's a lot of pressure when it comes to organizing and managing a high performance team. How did you stay grounded during this whole thing and still stay grounded today?
Yeah, I think on the business side, you can't get too far above the ground. And what I mean by you can't, even as a VP, I have to be involved in the operation. I have to know where my members are. I have to know what they're doing. I have to know how they're feeling. And I have to trust my gut. My gut tells me that people are disconnecting. My gut tells me the economy is pretty crappy right now and people are responding to it. My gut tells me that people need additional support. And I have to be responsive to that because at the end of the day, it's not about selling a product and letting them deliver. Similarly, the team, it's not about pushing it to them and saying, you get this done, you get this done, delegate, delegate, delegate. If I'm not connected to what's happening on the front line and the team's involvement, the business could just fall apart.
Sure.
Uh, and so people say you have to know how to do every single job in the company. That's the mark of a successful entrepreneur is like knowing every job in the it's making sure you revisit those jobs and make
Okay.
sure that
I respect
everything in
that.
those jobs is working as you've done it, as you've experienced it. Because if anything has changed from there, it could impact your whole operation. So from the business side, for me, it's making sure that I'm involved and I'm seeing what's happening, and as long as that's copacetic, then I can relax. If
Hmm.
it's not, or I hint, or I see, or I feel like things are going wrong, then I need to pivot and adjust really quickly. Whether that's providing the team with additional resources, whether that's introducing a new training program, whether that's getting involved myself.
Yeah.
Like those are things that I need to take action on right away. And like we said before, even with business, it's not about wondering and laboring and comparing. Like, let's make a decision. If it's the wrong decision, we stand by the decision. It's a decision we made at the time we had the facts for that decision.
Yep.
In hindsight, if it was the wrong decision, we own the decision, we move on to the next decision.
Mhm.
Simple as, right?
And
We're not,
whoever comes with you comes with you.
yeah,
'Cause you might lose some customers and some clients along the way because they're like, that was the wrong decision and it worked with us. That's what I'm saying with regards to the pressure. You're the one making the decision.
yes. Yeah, and sometimes you just have to make a decision. It doesn't matter what the decision is, a decision needs to be made. And then on the flip side, making like personal balancing, I know what I like. I know that I believe in a firm work-life integration and not 8 to 5 and then take a break, right? I think that you have to give yourself the opportunity to experience life during work and vice versa. Like do some work when you have your downtime, because that you're not going to always have a particular time of day, right? In the evening, for
I give you
example,
that. Yep.
in the evening you may be exhausted after work, and so your evening, whether it's family time, whether it's you sitting on the couch, whether it's you skipping the gym, that is a consequence of you having a rough day at work. But if you can break up your day, if you can say, okay, you know what? I've had a great morning. I'm going to go have a great lunch now, or I'm going to do a gym workout over lunch, or I'm going to meet a friend and catch up with them and take my mind off work. If you can
Yeah.
integrate that successfully and then come back re energized for a great evening of work, or whatever you want to do in the evening, and you have a great night of work. Like all of those are solutions that have helped me kind of make sure that I'm giving my optimal self all day, and I'm not following a routine that says society says you have to work from 8 to 5, whether you like it or not, whether you're happy or not, whether you're productive or not, and then you get the rest of the day for yourself as a reward, whether you're, again, happy or not, tired or not, etc.
Questionable. If you're happy or not, remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Being an entrepreneur, you can never turn it off. It seems to me you definitely don't turn it off. I know I'm gathering that you definitely
Yes.
don't turn it off. So
Yeah, the calls will be coming wherever I am.
But I like the fact that you're saying that you do take time in between to do other things. Go to the gym, contact a friend, have a little lunch, go for a walk or run a little hike. I think it's important to kind of keep that low, the consistency, but also keep it balanced within your life. Especially when you're dealing in
100%.
high pressure environments with, whether it be through sales or marketing or dealing with a team or dealing with, transactions at a 6 figures plus easily. You got to make sure that you do take some time to yourself to be like, look, what do I want to do for me? So I'm glad
Whose oxygen mask do you put on first?
oh, they say, oh my gosh, we back in the airlines. You got to put on yours first. You quizzing me. You got, oh,
Yeah.
now.
So
Yeah, you got to put on your mask
take care of
first.
you first. You got to take care of you first.
Okay. You had me for a second. I was like, hold up. Am I on a plane? He said,
You
who's
got it.
that?
You got it though. You got it. It's
Yeah,
like you
that
put your
means,
mask on first and then the
right.
person next to you.
That's right.
Same thing in life. You got to make sure that you're not working 12 hours a day, whether you're an entrepreneur or you're working for a company, delivering what you think is your best, only to like leave yourself undone and have a shitty life.
Yeah, I'm cool with that. I'm cool with that. I like that. I like that. For a second, I thought I was on a flight in American Airlines.
I don't
Yeah.
actually like a lot. I know a lot of entrepreneurs say I only sleep 4 hours a night and stuff like that. I get a full 8 hours because I believe in my rest. I believe to function and have brain capacity and have brain synapses functioning, I need it to rest for 8 hours. And so I do
Yeah,
not compromise on 8 hours of sleep. I get my 8 hours and then I am very productive during the day.
that's good. That's good. Now, a question I would mean to ask you, like, what type of, you know, what, let me see, what role has community played in this whole process success? Like, obviously, we talked about the community that you had and still have, family members being in Trinidad, and the whole community came with you. Whole community helped you build the house, right? So the word community is a part of this legacy that you're building. Like, how is that? Does it come natural? I know you said you're an introvert, so it's hard sometimes to build that community, but how is that the word community utilized every day with you?
It's funny. I think my legacy will be community in the sense of building. So I've run about 11 communities in my lifetime so far. I've built 5 of them and I've run about 11. And I am an introvert, but I believe in the concept of people and the collective. I think so much power so much more can be achieved when you have multiple people working on the same thing in unison with the same objective than
100%.
any one individual alone. It's why, as a leader, and my success in corporate America, and even as an entrepreneur, and even running my nonprofits where I have an army of volunteers, my success is because I'm able to recruit and inspire people to collaborate, to form a collective, to take an action that will benefit them all. And I think that that will be my legacy, is the concept of community. And I think I have more communities to build over time. But
Come on, take it on, take it on. He said, "I'm not stopping, Paul. I
no,
got more to build."
we got more communities to build. But I think that the quicker people can realize that they are the sum of their parts is better than them by themselves, the better we will all be as a collective, as a society. We are involved in communities, whether we like it or not. We just sometimes don't see the power of utilizing and tapping into and collaborating with that community to achieve an outcome that we're destined for.
Okay. Well, community, mentorship, community, family, uh, tunnel vision, laser vision, uh, discipline. Like, you've hit a lot of keywords. But to kind of conclude on our interview, I need to ask you this question, right? It's a big one right now. What advice, right? Thinking back to your journey as growing up as a young man in Trinidad to where you are, to the life that you lived when you came here at 18 to where you are now currently, right? Any first or second generation immigrant looking to pursue a life of entrepreneurship in the States, in a sense, what advice would you give to them?
Dream big. There is no dream that you can dream that you cannot achieve. So dream the biggest dream that you can dream, and then believe 100% that you can achieve that. That is your reality. Don't be don't be restricted or constrained by what you've grown up with, by what you think you know, by the limitations that you've been conditioned to look around and believe exist. You can be and do anything you want to. You just have to dream big enough.
Well, listeners, uh, we definitely, after today's conversation with Ty, we definitely are going to dream big, right? And keep on continuing to dream big, big. Thank you so much for just being present and just giving us a lot of information, a lot of gems, sharing your goods, your bads, the uglies with us because it really, really was very. I learned a lot. I learned a lot. Obviously, looking at your bio was a good amount of information, but to verbally hear it and to be in this conversation, I'm very blessed and very honored to be in your presence. Thank you so much for your time and just like I said, just you just being open and vulnerable on this platform.
I appreciate it. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. And I appreciate all the work that you guys are doing too.
Thank you. And I want to let the listeners know if you want to hear more inspirational stories like Ty, please check us out on ZakaConnect.com. Follow our social at Zaka Connect and follow our feed Zaka wherever you listen to your podcast.